Mr. Frank Fata?
I'm on.
Okay, so your call in user number 3. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very much. We can hear you now. So when item number 2, when you're called up to speak, then I will unmute you at that time, okay?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Gina Scarcella at 16 Blair Athol Crescent, are you there?
Can you hear us?
Okay, great. So we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so
I'm here with Enrico Asta, co-owner.
okay, so you guys are both on the same line.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we can hear you. You can hear us. That means we have everybody now. I'm going to put you back on mute, and then when the item that you're here for is called up, you'll be invited to speak at that time, and then I will unmute you at that time. Okay. All right. Thank you very.
When that's going to be? What number?
You are item number 3. So after the opening remarks, it'll be item number 1, 2, and then item number 3. The agent will speak first, and then the chairman will invite you to speak after that, okay? Okay, so I'm going to put you on mute right now.
Thank you.
Everyone's here.
Good morning. During the declared emergency in the City of Toronto, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and a provincial order that limits attendance at public gatherings. This will be a virtual public hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event that is being monitored by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by their computer, a phone or tablet app, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Participants, only the committee members will be participating by video. We have 3 members in this case in person. Myself, I'm the panel chair, and Mr. Stan Kumaric and Mr. Taylor, Robert Taylor. We also have Mr. Neil Palmer participating by WebEx. So we have 4 committee members present today. So any registered participants will be participating by audio only, and we ask that you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples. We are also acknowledged that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is now called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that apply to the property, permissions to extend or awful lawful non-conforming uses, and consents to sever properties to create new lots. Anyone who wishes to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and email address because Committee of Adjustment and the TLAB will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee, Decisions may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, or TLAB, and in some limited circumstances to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. The hearing procedure a little different here than we normally do when we're meeting in person. I will call each item in the order listed in the agenda. We'll be going straight from number 1 through to number 10, and then this afternoon, accordingly in order through the numbers on the agenda. In non-verbal hearing context, normally we vet the agenda to determine which applications are opposed and require more in-depth review, but in this case, we'll be proceeding in order. When an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant will proceed with their presentation if required. The committee may ask questions and then take the matter into the committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant or agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. Mr. Kamerick will be monitoring the time clock this morning, and he will comment when you're reaching 5 minutes and ask you to wrap up. When addressing the committee, please clearly state your name and address for the record. Please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent, where a matter is contested, proceeds first and will make a presentation to the committee. Please note that the committee will not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if substantially revised to ensure that the revised application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then, after the applicant has spoken and explained their application, either individuals either support or opposed to the application have pre-registered and are with us today will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they finish their presentation. When all speakers are finished, the applicant or agent has the opportunity to rebut only those issues that were raised by the speakers. That will mark the end of the discussion, and the committee is then taken into committee for a decision. Okay, we have some business to take care of before we get started with the first application. First of all, to confirm the minutes of the last meeting. That was sometime in March 11th. Got a motion to approve those minutes.
Also move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Kamerick seconds the motion. All in favor, just raise a hand. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. The minutes are approved. This morning's time slot, are there any declarations of interest of panel or staff for the items in this time slot?
Neil Palmer, item 7, I have a professional relationship with the agent and applicant.
Okay, so that will be duly noted, and when that item is called, you will not participate, and I guess you're working remotely, so you can go up and get a snack or something. Okay, item 7, Neil Palmer. No other conflicts?
Stan Komorek, just on one of the applications to be closed, 16 Bobby Point Road, I'd like to declare a personal conflict.
Okay, thank you. We'll be dealing with those closed file matters when we're off camera at the break. Okay, deferral requests, we're just going to go through in order, correct, Madam Chair, as we proceed? Okay. So we'll accordingly, we can get started and call our first item, which is item number 1, 63 Grandview Boulevard. We have registered as speakers or pre-registered as participants in this matter, and the moderator will just deal with the attendance, make sure everyone's with us. We have Tay Ruck, the agent. We have Drew Laszlo, the architect, and Enzo Capuchetti, the applicant. Okay, and this is an application to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. We have, I believe, 3 variances, and we have various materials before us on this application, including the notice, location map, survey plans, previous decision, and 2 letters of support. Okay, is everyone here?
Yes. Tay Rook.
Okay, Mr. Ruck, you're going to be the speaker, I assume, on this? Would
Sir.
you like to give us a brief presentation? Committee members, would you like, since this is our first virtual hearing ever, perhaps we'd just like to get a brief explanation. There is no one opposed on this application, but you can just perhaps briefly walk us through this application.
Sure, sir. I'm honored to be the first virtual in Etobicoke.
Okay.
In terms,
It'll
there's
be a
three
trivia
variants.
question in 50 years from now or something.
There are three variances before the committee today, one related to lot coverage, second being FSI, and the third being the height of the permitted soffit height at 7 meters. The proposed variance before lot coverage is 35.4%. And when you refer to the site plan, you'll note that the house dwelling itself is 16.25 meters in length, whereas 17 meters is permitted. So it's approximately it's 3.75 meters less than, 0.75 meters less than what's permitted as a right. So it's a shorter house than the bylaw requirements. In addition to that, what you'll note is that the side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, they're all complied with. And what results is a 35.4% lot coverage. But if you provide a house that is 17 meters in length, meets all the side yard setback requirements, front and rear, you actually end up with a house that's 35.8%. So it's a little bit larger than what's being proposed. In terms of FSI, the proposed FSI is 0.68. And once again, if you propose an as-a-right building envelope on this property at 17 meters length, complying with all of the setbacks, front, side, and rear, you would end up with an FSI of 71.6% or 0.716, whereas 0.68 is being proposed. The last variance being before you today is regards to the soffit height at 6.5 is being permitted, whereas 7 meters is proposed. But you'll also note that the overall height requirements are being met at 9.5 meters, which is the bylaw requirement. And as a result of that, the soffit height is 0.5 meters and greater in height, but I would submit to the committee in terms of overall massing that would contribute to any concerns or issues with adjacent properties. There are none because the overall height is being complied with, in addition to the fact that the house itself is 16.25 meters in length and is less than the bylaw requirements. You'll also note that there was 2 emails, files that were received in terms of letters of support. There's actually 6 letters of support that were submitted to the committee. I believe the 6 letters were just combined into one file. They are from 59 GRENVIEW, 56 GRENVIEW, 58 GRENVIEW, 60 GRENVIEW, 66 GRENVIEW, and one from 58 Wendover. So there are no comments from any departments from planning or any other departments with regards to this application. There are no issues with regards to the immediate adjacent neighbors. We did reach out to them, but they just decided not to submit any submissions. But in terms of what I understand, that there are no concerns. In terms of in terms of coverages and FSIs, this is consistent with what's existing in the area and would no means destabilize the neighborhood. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Ruck. That was very, very helpful. I just noticed when you were reading out the letters of support, is there a
Yes.
61 Glenview? I don't think you mentioned both adjacent provided that 61 and 65. What about both adjacent neighbors?
From what I saw on this thing, I did not see 61, 65.
Okay.
I only saw the 60, but we did reach out to the neighbors. They just did not provide, wish not to comment on the application. But from what I
Okay.
understand, they're not here and no opposition letters are submitted.
Thank you. Let's see if committee members have any questions for you, both Mr. Palmer remotely or Mr. Comerica, Mr. Taylor. No questions? Okay. There's no one else present here in opposition. We just have, I guess, the applicant and the architect here observing remotely. So do I have a motion on this application?
Mr. Chair, I find the 3 variances requested to be minor in nature, as well as meeting the other 3 tests under the Planning Act, and I therefore move for approval without conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Comerica. All in favor by show of hands? Thank you. It's unanimously approved. Thank you, Mr.
very much.
Lake and Mr. Laszlo and Capuchetti for being our first virtual application, and we're 1 for 1.
We're honored. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll call item number 2, 20 Hamptonbrook Drive.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, this is an application to construct a second-story addition above the existing dwelling and a two-story east side addition. We have notice, location map, survey, plans, and a support letter. And we have Urban Forestry requesting variance, or condition number 1. We have 2 variances on this application. Floor space index and side yard setback on the east side and the west side. Okay, so I see we have registered on this application David Carter, the owner applicant, who didn't pre-register. I assume he's here. And as well, a neighbor in interest, 22 Hamptonbrook, right next door. So is everyone with us?
David Carter, I'm here.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Carter. Mr. Fada, you're here as well?
Yeah, I'm listening in.
Okay, thank you. So let's have a brief application presentation from Mr. Carter, since we have Mr. Fada here with concerns. And then you'll have a chance, once we hear from Mr. Fada, you'll have a chance to respond to what he has to say. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, committee members, for having us here today. So yes, I have my wife here as well. We're looking to build a 2-story addition onto our current home. We would be leaving the north, west, and south existing walls. We would be looking to extend behind the current garage and move the garage, the east wall of the house with the garage wall out. That's where we'd be going over the east side setback. We're looking to go over to about 0.82 meters versus the current requirements are 1.2. We do have a letter of support from that neighbor for the house beside us. Yes. That's 18 Hamptonbrook, which is in the file. Yeah, so that's where we'd be going over. There is also if we can see the survey on the west side at the front of the house, the side setback is over 1.2, but at the back, the way it slopes, it goes down to about 1.18 meters. So we would be about an inch over the side setback with the west property. That wall is remaining, so we're not extending or moving it. But at the very back of the house, it does extend about an inch over the side setback, so we do need the variance there.
Okay, so on Mr. Fada's side, that's Mr. Fada's side?
I believe that would be Mr. Fada's side, yes.
That you're deficient by 0.02 of a meter. The other side, where you have a bit of a larger deficiency, we have a letter of support from that neighbor.
Correct, and I believe it's only a deficiency at the back quarter or third of the house. Okay. At the front, it is compliant. And we're not moving that wall at all. It's that wall is remaining.
Okay, so that's very important. That's an existing condition, so there's not much you could do about that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so I think we understand. If you want to maybe just wrap up your comments, and we can hear from Mr. Fada, you can have an opportunity to respond to whatever he has to say. But as you say, the impact on his side is 1 inch on only maybe about a third of the property. Otherwise, it's in compliance with the side yard setback.
Yep, I think the last thing that we would want to put forward for the committee's consideration, there are a number of other 2-story dwellings in the area and on the street. There's 3 houses that are being built on the street behind us. That's La Rose, 1 street north. They're currently in construction for 2-story houses of a similar size. So we do feel it fits and supports the character and vibe of the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone have any questions for Mr. Carter before we go on to hear from the neighbor? No? Okay, so let's hear from Mr. Fada. You're the neighbor next door. Can you let us know what your concerns are?
I just want to understand that that 1 inch. I'm just trying to visualize. I haven't been to the property. It's a rental property right now, and I'm representing my father who owns the property. Mm-hmm. So just on the construction side, what's the impact on the west side?
Could you please state your name and address just for the record? Thank you.
My name is Frank Fata, 22 Hamptonbrook.
Okay, Mr. Fett, as you've just heard from Mr. Carter, the impact on the other side, there's a bigger variance, well, it's still pretty small, from the 1.2 meter side yard setback. On your father's side, the variance is an inch for only part of the length of the property. So that would be the impact. And that's not an encroachment, it just means it's an inch offside being 1.2 meters away from the lot line. Yeah,
Okay.
it's the required side yard
1.2
setback.
meters and it's encroaching an inch on that.
And not only for the whole property, only for part of it, according to Mr. Carter.
Okay. Mr. Carter, have you
You have to
talked
ask
to the tenants?
Sir, you have to address your questions to me, not directly to
sorry.
Mr. whether you're in person or...
Have the tenants been spoken to? Are they aware of what you're planning to do?
Right, in terms of the construction activities and things of that nature. We'll let Mr. Carter respond to that. You have that property tenanted.
Yeah, my understanding is that they're aware of it. The notices were sent to them. I believe we've mentioned to them that we were looking to do construction on this over the last year or two. We haven't had specific discussions about how construction would work. My understanding is there shouldn't be any impact on them, but I'm happy to have discussions with your father or your tenants as we go. If there's any concerns they have about that stuff.
Okay.
Mr. Fata, this committee deals with the built form issues. We don't deal with construction-related matters, but the building department does. And if there's issues that your tenants, you can perhaps have your tenants contact Mr. Carter just to have a discussion. And, there's certain rules to be followed with, hours of work and things of that nature and impact on your property. So perhaps we don't deal with those issues, but there is, if there are any issues that arise, there is ability for you and or your tenants to deal with that. And probably the best way is as good neighbors to have a discussion with Mr. Carter to start.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any questions of committee members for Mr. Fata before he, okay. Mr. Carter, I don't know if you would wish to, respond to, I guess we've already had that discussion. If you'd like to formally respond, you have an opportunity to do so.
I don't think we have a formal response, no.
Okay, so with your permission, then I'll take the matter into committee for any final questions and or a motion on this application.
Thank you.
I believe the variances sought are minor, and I believe the application meets the 4 tests, and I would therefore like to move approval subject to the forestry condition number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Kamarick. We have a seconder for that motion. I see Mr. Palmer raising his hand. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. All in favor? Okay, the application is approved subject to the forestry condition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll now move on to item number 3. We have a revised notice. This is an application on 26 BLAIR ATHOL CRESCENT. It's an application to construct a 1-story front and rear additions, a new covered front porch, and a new rear deck. There are 5 variances. We have Urban Forestry requesting their condition number 1. And on this application, we have, as I stated, a revised notice, location map, survey plans, and a covering letter. And I see we have as registered speakers on this application. I believe this is our only opposed application of the morning session. We have Mr. Ian Cunha, the agent.
Yes, I'm here.
We have the neighbors at 16 Blair ATHOL Crescent, Gina Scarcella and Enrico Asta. And we have Luigi, Cugini Luciano and Anna Santos at 26 Blair. Also, are they the owners of the?
They're the owners.
Oh, they're the owner of the property. So the owners of this property, the subject property 26 Blair. Okay, they're there. I thought they owned another property, but that's the subject property. Okay, is everyone with us?
I'm here, sir.
So, Mr. Cunha,
Okay, yeah.
you will only be speaking on behalf of the applicant, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so your clients will not be speaking. Okay, Mr. Cunha, you have 5 minutes. Why don't you briefly present, and you can certainly, I believe, if you want to make reference to any plans, they can be put up on the screen, I believe. So if you want to proceed, please go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. As you said, we are asking permission to build a one-story addition at the front and at the rear of the property. There are 5 variances before us. Variance 3 and 4 are due to the existing length of building. So this bungalow was built before the passing of the bylaw, where length of building on a one-story house was not required. And items number 2 and number 5 are regarding the existing side yard setback on the east side. So the only variance that we have that we actually can control is the lot coverage. We're asking for 37%, where the required lot coverage is 33%. So that's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Committee members, any questions for Mr. Cunha before we hear from the opposition? No? Okay. In that case, Mr. Asta, Ms. Scarcella, you're the owners of the adjacent property at 16. Will you each be speaking, or only one of you? Are the neighbors with us?
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Can you hear us?
Can hear you now. Yes. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to present our concerns. I'll speak on behalf of Mr. Asta, my husband, and myself. We're co-owners of 16, which is 5 houses down from 26 on the same side.
Okay.
We,
and your name is Anna Santos, correct?
Gina Scarcella.
Oh, Gina. Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. My mistake.
I'm sorry?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So you're number 16. You're 16 Blair.
Concerns with variances.
Can you let us know what
16
your
Blair
concerns are?
ATHOL. Yes. With variances 2, 3, and 5, we believe they all relate to the side yard setbacks. Our concern is that they do not respect and reinforce the prevailing physical characteristic of the neighborhood with respect to what's prevailing in the setbacks. This is a low-density neighborhood characterized by wide separation between the homes, large front yards, all adding to space arenas.
Sorry, you're breaking up. You want to repeat that? Sorry, ma'am. We didn't hear that. You're in the hearing room. You want to just repeat your last sentence?
This variance is in our opinion, a major and not minor, given how it will impact the characteristics of the neighborhood. They're asking for what should be a 2.4 meter setback in the front. They're asking for a 0.85 meter variance, which is about 2 feet 9 inches. And in the back, 0.89, which is about 3 feet. And that's particularly when you consider how the eaves will protrude, which will almost have it sitting on the house next door on the east side. Setbacks in this neighborhood, as I'm the planning department, are somewhere between 1 to 2. And so this is quite outside that what is prevailing in the neighborhood. There are some new construction in the neighborhood on the street being 25, 17, and 15, and to our knowledge, none of those have extended beyond the setback in the side. Now, why are we concerned, you ask? We believe that even less areas of this magnitude will change the character of the neighborhood, and especially for not just this, live next door to the house they are proposing to renovate, and they are on that east side, and they only seek a variance for that east side. Now, it may be that they do not mind the closeness of the house next door to them, but the city, in my respectful view, has to consider the impact on the entire neighborhood. We're concerned about the precedent this will set. Houses do come down in this neighborhood. I have one going up next door, and the precedent, and it's already been stated to me, is, well, the people down there got 1.51. And what that will do, and not in a gradual manner, when you look at it will completely change the appeal and the feel of the neighborhood. I have not heard anything. I would suggest respectfully to the committee that there is nothing on file, nothing that has been said verbally today to demonstrate how the app. Those are my comments, and thank you for considering it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Carcella. You broke up a little bit during your presentation, but thank you for that. So just to summarize your concerns, that it doesn't meet the prevailing character and the feeling of openness. But as we heard from Mr. Cunha can respond. If you heard from him, a lot of these variances, and you got cut off into particular as to which variances are most concerning to you, but they're existing conditions, unlike a lot of the applications before us this morning, where and the one next door to you is a completely new build. In this case, they're just adding some additions. So as Mr. Cunha explained, a lot of these side yard setbacks are already existing with what's there on the lot. So let's hear from him, but I just wanted to summarize, we did have a little bit of issues with you breaking up during your presentation, but I think we got the gist of it. Any members, you would agree?
No, I think I got the gist of it, although I did kind of miss about half of it because of the breakup, so sorry.
I think sometimes when it broke up, it would continue back where it got left off, but other times there was like a blank.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Cunha, can you please respond to the issues raised by the neighbor at 16?
Well,
So now we're going back to Mr. Cunha. We finished with the neighbors. Unless there's something you'd like to add, maybe let's just hang on. Ms. Carcella, would you like to add anything? To sum up, because you were breaking up a bit, but did I fairly state what your concerns are with the application?
You said that you missed half of that, but if you're comfortable,
We're not getting you.
you've heard what you did. I would say maybe.
We didn't hear one thing you said at that time.
I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why, and I apologize for that. I do Zoom meetings all the time, and this has never happened.
Sure, it's not your
But
doing.
I can tell you that the existing, the side yard setback on the east side is not existing. So I'm not sure what the applicant's agent is talking about, and maybe that can be explained a little more, at least to me. They want to come out.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
And
Cunha?
I'm not sure how that is existing. I'm not sure how it can be controlled.
Okay, now we don't hear anyone.
Speak, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Ian Cunha.
Okay, Mr. Cunha, were you able to hear the neighbor's presentation to get the gist of what her issues are, and so you can respond?
Yeah, yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did. Okay, so the existing, as per the drawings, the survey that's before you, the existing house is 1.55 meters at the front, 1.52 meters at the back. That's the setback, the existing setback. Next door at number 24, it's 1.51 and 1.50. On number 28, it's 1.88 at the front and 1.63 at the back. So what does that mean? It means that the houses, when they were originally built, were not built with 2.4 meter side yard setbacks. On top of it all, we are just extending the existing wall of the house. So we are 1.51, which is basically just continuing the rear wall of the house.
Right. So,
We're not reducing the setbacks. We're just maintaining the existing setbacks.
right, so you're extending
We
the
also-
setback for the addition that you're building, correct? You're using that existing, you're not jogging it in. It is remaining a one-story house. You're not, that's why you're looking for the coverage, correct? You don't have 2 stories here. This is a one-story addition to one-story house, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
We
please
also,
continue.
just so you know, we do have, we talked to the neighbors at number 28. It's true that my client still owns number 24. But we also talked to number 28, and they have no issue whatsoever with this application.
So those would be the 2 most directly affected neighbors. They're the same owner at 24, and 28 has no concerns, so.
Correct.
The applicant here with us is concerned about precedent because she is about 5 houses down.
Well, it
And
would be a
about the look
precedent
and
if
feel
we
of the
were
neighbor,
brand-
and
building
she's
a brand
raised the
new
look
house.
and feel of the neighborhood, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, we would be creating a precedent if we were building a brand new house. But because we're maintaining the existing setbacks that have been there for probably 50 years, I believe that we're not altering the house in any way, shape, or form that would create a precedence for her next door neighbor who might want to build a brand new house.
Are these the side yards, what is being proposed with new builds as well as the existing ones? Because here, I guess with the neighbor, you are extending, your addition is maintaining the existing setbacks of the,
Correct.
which predated the bylaw.
Correct.
Okay. And the neighbor at 28 has no issue with that.
Correct.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add to that, Mr. Cunha?
Just that the length of building, nobody brought it up, but I just want to make sure that the committee realizes that it's an existing length. It goes from the front wall of the garage to the back wall of an addition that was done a number of years ago on the west corner of the house. So it's an existing length of building. So number 3 and number 4 are also something that I cannot control.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Cunha, is that all you'd like to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Committee members, any questions for Mr. Cunha or for that matter for the neighbor?
I guess a question for the applicant and for staff. The rear addition that's being proposed, if it were to be within the allowable setback, you would still have to be going for a variance, I'm assuming, because of the pre-existing condition. So even if you were to jog that rear addition, you would still need to seek approval for the existing condition. I guess that's more of a question for staff, but is that correct?
No, so the existing house is allowed to stay where it is. They only need variances for anything that is new.
Okay, so if the new addition were to be jogged in to accommodate the current setback provision, then that wouldn't be a variance on this application.
Correct.
Okay. However, having said that, from the street, it will look essentially the same, whether it's done, whether that setback is done or whether it's done with this setback.
Correct.
Well, there is a new front covered porch, so, and a new deck.
No, I understood, but that front doesn't, they don't need the setback variance on the east side for the front.
Correct. Okay, any further questions? No, Mr. Palmer, thank you. Okay, so we'll take the matter into committee, for a motion. And I note there is an urban forestry condition being requested, urban forestry condition number 1.
Yes, sir, I'm aware.
Mr. Chair, I'm compelled by the fact that the proposed additions do not affect the side yard setbacks in any way. Visibly from the street, the spaciousness that it was commented on by Ms. Scarcella is maintained. I'm compelled by the fact that the immediate neighbors have no issues with the application, and I'm therefore prepared to move that the application be approved subject to urban forestry condition number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Mr. Palmer, thank you. All in favor? Show of hands. Okay, the matter is unanimously approved. Thank you, Mr. Cunha and Ms. Garcella for your comments.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good day.
Okay, our next applications are 2 applications we're going to hear together, items 4 and 5. The address is 549 Silverthorn Avenue, Part 1, and 549 Silverthorn Avenue, Part 2, which is item number 5. And this is for, let me just get it open. This is to construct new semi-detached dwellings with attached garages, and there are 9 variances on the 2 applications. Urban Forestry is requesting conditions 3 and 5, which I believe is to deny the application. And we have forestry, I believe, as well on that. And we have registered on this application only the agent, Mr. Pocinelli. Perhaps we can see if Mr. Pocinelli is with us. Sir?
Yes, I'm here. It's
Okay.
George Balsanelli.
Okay, so we have no opposition registered on this applications. So perhaps you can take a few minutes to walk us through the application and what you're seeking to do here with your 2 new builds.
Okay, I apologize. This is my first time at this CAN, and so I may not use the proper terminologies, but I'm representing my twin boys that are building these homes for themselves.
Okay.
And so basically what we're proposing is to build 2 brand new semi-detached homes on 2 lots that were existing from the original register plan. And we've checked in the area for previous semi-detaches, and we feel that the variances that are requested were in line with the rest of the stuff. We've also spoken to planning staff, you know, with our variances, and they didn't address any major issues. I've also been following online any updates with forestry. I've spoken to, you know, through emails with Max Dita, and her basically the concerns were that because when I saw the denial, and I thought, well, that really kind of like scared me, and she basically said that there's a bylaw out there that just addresses that, you know, new infills is taken away from front yard um, tree planting. And we will be definitely proposing 2 beautiful trees, one on each one of the lots, which right now the current property has no trees. So not only that we have no trees, but we will be replanting 2 beautiful trees on the property, and not seedlings. So, what we would probably be doing is probably planting something that's about 10 or 15 feet tall, and a tree that the City of Toronto Forestry is requesting. We've also have gone to all the neighbors, and they basically have given us all the thumbs up. They liked the project, but they didn't really want to, put anything. I tried to get them to sign some support letters, but they just said, George, you know what? We like what you're doing. Just go ahead and do what, and God bless you, type of thing.
Okay, that was going to be my question, Mr. Paulsonelli, is whether you've discussed what you propose to do with the neighbors. Okay. Committee members, any further questions? Any questions for the agent?
I have a few.
Okay.
Okay, first off, your neighbor at 545 Silverthorn, and I believe it's 547, are pre-existing semis. Do you know the density coverage on those properties?
I don't. No, I don't. I thought when I spoke to planning that they told me that we were in line with most of the other, variances in the neighborhood, including the adjacent one. The adjacent one was done several years ago because you can see it's an older build. But our lots are similar size in length.
I understood. I mean, you're asking for more than 1 times coverage, and when I see that, I understand forestry's concern because of that, and I also would like to know then how that complies with your neighbor. But
yeah, I don't have that number in front of me, and I apologize. I wasn't, I wasn't prepared for that, but yeah, I know our lot is a little bit short compared to, I think we've got 110, and the other ones that we've had in the area that were very similar to ours on Commodore were 120, and they were approved for 99.9% or something like that.
okay, well, as I say, for me, when it goes above 1 times coverage, it's a bit of a flag, and that's why I wanted to get an idea there. The trees that you're proposing to plant, are you proposing to plant them in the back?
No, in the front.
In the front,
On the city's property.
on the city
On the
property?
road allowance, on the allowance.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir, I have one question regarding the variance with respect to the permitted area of the platform at or above the second story being 4 meters. You're looking for 12 meters. This is in the rear platform. Are there any privacy concerns? Do other neighbors have second story, platforms of that size? You're 3 times.
We will be providing a privacy screening on the adjacent neighbors.
Okay.
At least a 1.8 meter.
Okay, so is that a common situation to have a, what room of the dwelling is that deck, or that second
Off of the
platform?
kitchen. It's off of the kitchen and the family room.
I see. But it's on the main floor of the house, not the second floor of the house?
Yes, it's on the main floor of the house, correct.
Because it's interesting, the way the bylaw reads, the limitation of 4 square meters is with respect to platforms at or above the second story. So I assume, is it because the back is raised? Is there a grade change on the property?
No, it's not, but it's just because the way the bylaw reads about, because this is a slab on grade, we don't have like a real basement to this house.
Okay.
So what ends up happening is the portion behind the garage, which is at grade level, is, I guess, a little room. And then the first floor above that, which is the main level, is the second floor. And I think the bylaw reads that it's, if it's over a certain height, I think 1.8 or 2 meters above the grade,
Okay.
they consider that the second story.
So it's really not a second floor, platform off a bedroom or something like that. It's the main space off of the living area.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's very helpful. Any further questions for the agent?
I have a question for staff. The agent is proposing to be planting trees on city property. Is that a common practice?
Usually the city will be involved, so forestry has requested conditions related to that, so they would have to approve any location of trees being planted.
So this wouldn't be a cash in lieu situation?
I see Mr. Palmer
It
has
is,
his hand
the
up.
condition that they've requested is where
Condition
there is
3?
no street tree, the owner shall provide payment in lieu of planting one street tree in the city road allowance. Their comments did mention the fact that the proposed driveways would eliminate viable planting space for a tree in the municipal boulevard.
That's what I
So
thought.
they may just ask for cash in lieu. Or that's what they've asked for.
That's what they've asked for.
Okay, I see Mr. Palmer has a question. You had your hand up?
No, and my question was in relation to that. The city's asked for $583 per tree. And the applicant indicates they're putting in their own tree. So in effect, he's going to be paying double if he puts in his own tree and then has to pay as well. And if he's aware of that, I'm fine with it, but I just wanted to be aware of that.
I guess it'll be noted in the minutes, but the question is whether there's an ability to actually plant a tree and still have viable parking there.
I think what you're faced with there is the forestry will probably determine that the space in front of the house is not viable for planting, so that this idea of planting a tree in the front is not going to happen.
Okay, I guess if you look at the forestry letter, there's a whole procedure if it's a denial in terms of having to deal with, the applicant will still have to deal with forestry in some way or another, even following a decision. Is that correct, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Sorry, what's the?
They'll have to negotiate something with urban forestry in accordance with the procedures in these circumstances when
Well, they've requested a condition, which is the cash in lieu of planting the tree.
Okay.
If the applicant still wants to plant a tree, they can discuss that, but they will have to pay the fee.
Right, so that's something they can deal with in due course, in the normal course, once assuming he gets his approval, they'll then deal with the city forestry department in terms of how they resolve this issue. This still will become an issue, notwithstanding our approval and our not denying the application on that basis. Is that correct? They'll still have to deal with urban forestry.
Yes, they'll require the forestry clearance in order to get a building permit.
Correct, okay. Any further questions, or are we ready for a motion? And I guess we'll do number 4 and then we'll do number 5. We can do one motion? Okay.
One last question, if I may, for staff. What is the minimum lot size in that area currently? Or is
I'm
it?
not a zoning
sure.
examiner, so I
Okay,
don't
I'm
know.
sorry, that's okay. They're existing
Can I
lots,
answer?
so it doesn't really matter.
That's not a variance, is it? No, it's not. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's look at the location map. I think he did mention that his lot is shorter than some others, or I don't quite see that along that block of Silverthorn. Okay, so any other questions, or are we ready for a motion? Mr.
Not really a question, but are we all aware that we have a very current memo from Urban Forestry on this application dated June 8th, which makes it clear that there's one condition, number 1, and there's no reference to cash in lieu. I'm relying on the June 8th memo from Urban Forestry on this, and it would be imposing condition 1, period. Is that
Okay, so
everybody's
your motion?
understanding?
Is that your motion?
Okay,
No,
well,
sorry.
No, but condition 1 doesn't make sense because there's no existing tree there.
There are two conditions that are recommended. There is the consolidated memo from Urban Forestry
Right?
that is dated June 9th. And in that memo, they've recommended condition 3.
Yep.
Condition 3 is where there is no existing street tree, the owner shall provide payment in lieu of planting one street tree. And then in their standalone memo, where they reference requesting that you deny the variance due to a planned tree and permanent loss of a viable planting space, there is a further recommendation
Right.
to submit a permit to injure or remove a city-owned tree, because they also have to look at neighboring trees to see if there will be any damage to those.
So there's a conflict between their consolidated memo dated June 9th and their standalone dated the day before.
No, it would, both
March.
conditions would be
So they would want both
requested by
conditions.
them.
So what?
They want both conditions.
Oh. Over to you.
Yeah, the original memo was dated March, I guess, correct? That's the original March memo?
There are two updated memos. The consolidated one
Right.
is dated June 9th, and then the standalone memo related to this specific property is June 8th.
Okay. Sir, what's
So
on the
just-
property now? What's on the property now? It's, you're building a pair of semis. Is there considered one lot? Is there an existing house on straddling both lots?
Sorry, are you asking me?
Yes. What's the current
Yeah, okay.
situation?
Yeah, so the current situation right now, yes, as you mentioned, there's 2 lots, but there's 1 house that's sitting on the property, and there are no trees on the property.
Sorry. So that structure is going to be demolished, and you're going to build a pair of semis, is what you're proposed to do.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you. Okay, someone ready to make a motion?
May I just
I'll,
ask?
oh.
Sorry, go ahead, sir. Who was that?
No, I was going to make a motion. Go ahead with your question.
Okay, the question is, to satisfy urban forestry, would we have to impose their conditions number 1 and 3? Should I carry on? Am I on a roll? Yeah, I find the variance is minor in nature, that the proposed development is compatible with the streetscape, especially with respect to the very similar properties next door. All of the tests under the Planning Act are met, in my opinion, and I recommend approval, subject to urban forestry conditions number 1 and 3.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for that motion. Mr. Palmer. Thank you. All in favor? Okay, the application is approved unanimously, subject to the conditions. And thank you, Mr. Paulsonelli, and best luck for your sons with their new homes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Member and members of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, so our next application is item number 6, 17 VASSAR Drive. It's an application for a detached dwelling with a attached garage. We have only one variance. We have urban forestry requesting condition number 5. I note that the variance is for from 0.48 requested to 0.45 permitted. And I see we have before us with this application, Mr. Love is the owner of the property. Mr. Love, are you with us?
Yes, that's correct. Good morning.
Good. We're getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know if that's on your end or not.
Okay.
But, like I mentioned, this is an application for a new build, and there's only one variance, being a an overage over what's permitted of, let's just see here. I missed it. 0.48 from 0.45, so very straightforward. So you're with us, Mr. Love? I'm going to ask
that's correct.
I'm going to ask committee members if they feel they need a presentation on this application, given it's such a minor variance. And there is only one variance. We do have the urban forestry issue on this application as well, if you're listening to the last one.
Yes, I was. I believe actually that urban forestry comment is for a previous variance I had requested that got resolved already.
Okay.
To do with driveway width.
So their report does request refusal as it would impact the driveway would impact the tree.
Correct. That would be a from an earlier notice, or an earlier zoning notice from February 10th, in
Well,
which I had two.
So what happened
proposed.
between now and February 10th? Did you resolve that issue with urban forestry, or why are you saying it's
No,
an
my
old
understanding-
condition?
Yeah, so my understanding is the that variance number 2 that the urban forestry is commenting about was from February 10th, and since then through I guess the past couple months, my understanding is there was a re-review internally with the zoning department, and the zoning notice was revised on April 16th, and that variance number 2 was removed, and the comments from the zoning department was that the examiner had noted that after discussions with the managers and planning staff, wider driveway would be allowed to match the interior space of the garage.
Sir, so it looks like in your letter, you sent a covering letter dated April 20th explaining that there's changing your drawings, the default changes being the widening of the driveway, the variance is now removed. So the issue is, I'm just wondering if the fact that the driveway has now been wider triggers the tree issue. The fact that you made the driveway wider would have impact and that matches up with the denial of variance number 2. It says the new driveway will have a width of 5.5 meters. So can you please comment on that? Like you said, it's an old application or it's February, but I'm just wondering, this later in March, it still talks about denying variance number 2.
Yeah, and that's where it gets a little weird because I'm not sure with the variance number 2 or sorry, with the variance from the February, it was kind of done internally before we had updated anything, and then my agent contacted the city and said, listen, I'm just revising some drawings because the city had a question about the drawings because of the driveway at that time. It was always shown as wide. It just has stopped at the right-of-way. And so the examiner at the time, back in February, said, hey, are you guys sure you don't mean to extend it? At that point, my agent said, oh no, we did mean to extend it all the way. So they did through the right-of-way. And at that point, they contacted the zoning office. And at that point is when they said, yeah, we understand you're going wider, and we've reviewed it internally. And because the width matches your interior of your garage, it should be okay. And at that point, then on April 16th, it was removed from the variances.
So we did question that because there was no variance number 2. So Urban
Right.
Forestry did provide an updated comment, and their recommendation is Urban Forestry requests that the Committee of Adjustment panel deny the variance, which would indirectly lead to the proposed increase of the driveway to 5.5 meters, and its approval will require removal of bylaw protected city tree.
Okay. Mr. Love, did you hear that, what the Secretary Treasurer just read out, just summarized?
Yep. Yeah, it definitely did.
Whereas the fact that you made the driveway wider and eliminated a variance triggers the concern from urban
I see.
forestry. Because now that it's wider, there's less ability to have a tree there.
Definitely. And so I had an arborist come and take a look at it because we just wanted to see what we could do, what our options were. So they put together a report and there were about 7 items on the report that talked about the tree, various levels of damage and the fact that its roots are wrapped around about a foot away from one of the hydrants, from a fire hydrant, and wrapped around it, and how that's not supposed to be the case anymore, and a few others. So what we would propose is we put back a Freeman maple tree, which is native to the area. And we definitely love the trees. We have a beautiful Austrian pine in the backyard for keeping. And it's just with this, we have a beautiful honey locust in the backyard. Just with this Austrian pine, it doesn't look, it's not in the greatest of health right now. It's a little too close to the fire hydrant, and we're definitely going to plant another one either on city property or on our property. That's not a problem. And we would have to, I understand, we'd have to apply for that removal as well through urban forestry.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Love. Any further follow-up questions for Mr. Love, or are we ready to take the matter into committee for a decision? Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm a little confused because if variance 2 was in place, then I'm assuming urban forestry would not have an issue with the narrower driveway. So I don't understand why they're asking to deny variance 2.
No, their updated comment is to refuse the application.
Altogether, okay.
And I guess their concern is that due to the widened driveway, which, as the applicant said, matches the interior space of the garage, so it's sort of somewhat logical, would affect the ability to plant a city tree.
Okay. I have one question for the applicant. Given that this is a new build and you were aware of the forestry concerns, was there a possibility to put the driveway, to flip the design and put the driveway on the existing side?
Definitely looked into that. Unfortunately, the tree sits right in the center of the property, so I would have a similar condition on the other side.
Okay, because the existing so you're putting the driveway on the same side as the existing driveway.
Yeah,
Got it.
definitely.
Got it. Sorry, I'm looking at the neighbor's driveway. That's what threw me off.
Yeah. And also given that the tree is kind of in the center, I was looking at doing that. There's also a hydro pool. If I flip it as well, there's a hydro pool there.
No, I see that.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to, in reality, my wife and I just wanted to keep the house looking almost matching. We're doing the same finishes. We're doing everything we can to keep the character of the house and stay, fit in with the neighborhood there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions for Mr. Love, or are we ready for a motion?
Okay, looking at it from a planning perspective, I mean, the one variance that remains is very minor, and I believe otherwise it definitely meets the tests of the 4 tests. So I would like to propose approval. However, I would like to make that subject to forestry condition number 1, so that the applicant can try to work with forestry to see if we can save that tree.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Mr. Taylor, thank you. Yeah, I would agree that, the applicant is to be commended to building a new home with only one very minor variance of 0.3 of a coverage, no other variances. So, notwithstanding the issue with the planning, I think that's the correct situation. So all in favor? Okay, unanimous approval. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Thank you. Okay, our next item is item number 7, upon which Mr. Palmer has a conflict. So get up, he just vacated his chair, gone off to have a snack or something. And this application is to maintain the existing rear yard deck. And I believe it's just trying to open up the application here. Yes, it's to maintain the existing rear yard deck. There is, I guess the only variance is the soft landscaping requirement in the rear yard of 50% is now, due to this deck, 39.78. And what do we have on this application? We have all the typical plans, preview decision, and a covering letter. And we have one registered speaker. We don't have any opposition. Mr. Simonetta, as the agent.
Hello.
You're with us, Mr. Simonetta? Welcome.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. Can you just explain what happened with this? This deck was built without a permit, or why are we here today?
Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you for hearing my minor variance application, which, as you stated, is to maintain the existing rear yard deck. My name is Biagio Simonetta, and I'm the agent and the spouse of the owner of 34 EDGEVALLEY, which is Adelina Simonetta. Basically, the summer of 2017, I hired a contractor to install a rear yard swimming pool at 34 EDGEVALLEY. My wife and I had moved into the property in late 2016. The existing deck was part of the home as built. And what we did was we hired a contractor. Contractor, I guess, had a drawing done and I believe submitted with the building application. And at the time, the drawing suggested that the green space or green area, the softscape, was just over 51%, and the paved area was just under 49%. And at that point, we went ahead, we proceeded, we installed the swimming pool, finished all the landscaping. And I guess what happened in June of 2018, I received a letter from Toronto Building, which included a zoning bylaw notice stating that the proposed rear yard landscaping was quoted at 44%. So we essentially were 6% below the minimum rear yard soft landscaping, which is required. What I learned through this process was what we had done was the assumption that was made was the existing porch was deemed to be part of the house because it's built. It's got an like it's covered, but not enclosed. And I believe that's where we hit the fork in the road and went in the wrong direction. Going through the process, what I ended up doing was I ended up hiring a Comoni and Associates to prepare a proper site plan off the survey. And in so doing, basically the 39.78 figure for softscape was derived. That obviously included the enclosed porch, the covered porch as part of the backyard and not part of the home. And so this started the process of me requiring me to submit my minor variance application to request a variance of just over 10% with respect to softscape being reduced from 50% to 39.78%. And I guess in a nutshell, that's what happened. It was, I hate to say an honest mistake because I guess typically all mistakes are honest, but it was certainly an error that was done at the beginning of the process in terms of of not properly classifying the covered porch as
Okay,
part of the backyard.
Okay, so that's, thank you for that explanation, and I see it's also set out in your sort of your covering letter. There is no one in objection. There's some neighbors. Oh no, I thought a neighbor letter, but it was on the other application. So let's see if committee members have any questions for you or if we're ready for a motion. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Simonetta? Okay, is someone ready for a motion?
This is, in my view, very minor, and I would move to approve that, given that it certainly meets the 4 tests.
Yeah, I don't know how it even came here, whether some neighbor made a complaint or even how the city was aware of this. So it came to their attention because I'm sure there's many, many, many decks in the city that are slightly over or deficient in soft landscaping. It's not glaring. Okay. Motion seconded by Mr. Taylor because Mr. Palmer's not here. All in favor? You have unanimous approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Have a great day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Okay, so we have items 8, 9, and 10 remaining. So item number 8, 11 Westmore Drive, Unit 4.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me just introduce. This is the retail application, correct? Okay, so this is an application to permit. Hold on. Looking at the previous decision. Sorry.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Yeah, are you on speakerphone or?
Yes, sir. I'm here, sir. Sorry.
Take it off because we're getting some feedback.
The speaker?
Yeah, if you can take it off the speaker, it may help us. So this is an application to maintain the existing retail and wholesale food store within Unit 4 of the existing building. A previous Committee of Adjustment application approved a variance related to use. And we have planning requesting a condition of approval on this application. So, sir, can you just give us a brief presentation? I see you're the only registered speaker. We have no neighbors here in opposition.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the Committee of Adjustment.
Yeah. Sir, first of all, have you seen the planning condition? Are you aware that planning is requesting a condition of approval?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I went through the process of everything there. I'm the owner and the operator of Greens West Indian Groceries, 11 Westmore Drive, Etobicoke.
Can you try speaking a little bit louder, sir? Because I'm having trouble hearing you. Mr. Lackman? That's
Yes,
Mr. Lackman. Okay, can you give us your name and address just to introduce yourself for the record?
I did. My name is Ganesh Lachman, owner and operator of the Greens West Indian Grocery, 11 Westmore Drive, Etobicoke. I would like to introduce my family, my wife, and my son who is joining me now in this hearing. We are a family-run small business since 1994, 26 years, at the same location with previous minor variances, extensions, which will expire in August 2020. Our business is retailing ethnic food products, exotic fruits and vegetables, and Ontario fruits and vegetables in season. We would like for the committee to grant us an extension of approval so we can manage our livelihood and provide for our community and the customers with their continued requirements. That's about all I got for right now, sir.
Okay, and we have comments from transportation here as well. And you've seen the condition of approval that city planning is asking us to impose as a condition of granting you approval here. You've seen that staff report dated March 16th, where they say if we approve it, they want the retail use to be maintained as ancillary to the wholesaling use, and that the retail use shall be limited to 4.2 square meters. I don't think it's...
Well, the existing store, I won't change anything, sir. The existing store has been there since 1994. 500 square foot is in retail and 500 square foot is in the storage. And that's how we've been operating all the years long.
So why are you only before us now? You've been doing this business since 1994, the same thing, both wholesale and retail? Oh, it had a time limit. Okay, it expired.
Yeah.
I see. So how long was that time limit? I'm looking at the previous decision. I see.
Previous
Oh, it's
decision
for
was
15 years. Okay.
15 years,
So it
yeah.
came up in
This is
2010, and I guess maybe they got another extension? He's been doing it since
15 years.
94? I see.
An
Okay.
extension before, yeah, 5 years.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lackman. Let's see if committee members have any questions or if we're ready for a motion.
Sorry, you said you had the retail area is 50 square feet?
Oh, like 500 square feet. The unit is only 60 square foot.
Okay, because planning is recommending that the retail use shall be limited to 4.2 square meters.
Well, that's what the minor variance was about, because we're using that was the minor variance was about before the approval. We only retailing, like we have, is a retail store, 500 square feet.
So are
The
you
whole
asking
store-
the committee not to impose that condition?
All I'm asking for an extension as it is, for the past years, the past 26 years.
I understand that,
And
but
it's-
planning has recommended a condition to limit the size of your retail use. If the committee imposes that condition, you will not be permitted to have 500 square feet for retail.
Huh? Well, I don't understand, because that's all the space I got for retail for, that's been, all the space I was using all the time, and that was the condition thereafter. I don't know how come this planning will do that now. It's a very small store. It's my family store.
Yeah, Mr. Lackman, I'm just, sir,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read the planning report in detail, but it goes on to say in the second page that the existing citywide bylaw permits the wholesale use. However, the bylaw specifies that a retail use is only permitted if it is associated with a permitted manufacturing use. As such, the existing retail use, which is in conjunction with the wholesale use, is not permitted. Then it goes on to say that the applicant, being you, has advised planning staff that the existing retail area is ancillary to the wholesale use and occupies approximately 4.18 square meters of the 98.471 square meter unit. It says the measurement represents approximately 4.24% of the unit being used for retail. So staff has the opinion a retail use represents a minor portion at 4.24%. Obviously, that would be minor. So therefore, they say, therefore, as long as the wholesale use is maintained as the primary use and the retail component is maintained within Unit 4, staff are of the opinion the proposal is appropriate for the subject site. So as such, committee choose to approve. Planning staff has recommended the retail use be maintained as ancillary to the hotel use, which I think you've agreed with that, but it says and be limited to 4.2 square meters, which I think you're not. They'd say that you're the one who told them that.
No, sir. I probably, if I did, I did make a
Yeah.
mistake in terms of that. No,
So
but
how
this
much?
would be-
Sure. So in that case, how much of the whole retail use has to be, according to ancillary to the predominantly wholesale use?
Yeah,
So-
more retail than wholesale, yeah.
More wholesale than retail.
More retail.
You're saying you have more retail than wholesale.
Only the retail space, that's what I'm doing all the time, not about wholesale.
And this is what you've been doing since 1994. No change.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
When you look at that plaza, to me, just driving by and looking at the uses that are there, they're all retail.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got your neighbor is a Subway sandwich shop, is it not?
Yes, sir.
And then on the other side, you've got
Party World.
You've got a bakery, you've got a haircutting salon. I mean, these are all retail establishments, are they not?
Yes, sir.
So,
And they're pointing out in Unit 2, there's a convenience store that was approved in 2015. So you got a convenience store, you got a Subway.
was your previous approval tied to the term of your lease?
Yes, sir.
And so,
And it's extended, yeah.
have you renewed your lease now?
Yes, sir, I get 5 plus 5 the next 10 years, or 5 plus 5 plus 5. I've been there for a long time with this landlord.
So when is your current lease extension, when does it terminate?
That will finish in October, but I've got a renewal already done with the landlord. It's 5 plus 5 plus 5. That's under file. I submit that with the application.
Yeah, so that's what expires August 15th. So the question is, I guess you would like us to approve the application but not have the limit on the size, the floor area of the retail component, because you said it's always been retail. Your neighbors are retail, right? So 4.24% is not what you need and what you've done and what you're doing. I think the issue is here, you're in a core employment area, so the city is very, very particular about maintaining their core employment zones. But as Mr. Komaric mentioned, the entirety of the plaza, there's other tenants and retail being convenience store and sub shop. So I'll open that up to the committee. That I guess what you're asking us, I guess, is that it be not have that second condition. Mr. Palmer, sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Yeah, no, that's just refer to the transportation comments, and they say there's no operational impacts on adjacent roads. So I think that's a sort of a key comment. This use has been there for a long time. The other uses appear to be commercial in nature, and they're not having operational impacts on the adjacent roads. So I think that's a very key comment.
I agree.
This
Thank you.
use can probably be maintained.
Okay. That's a very good point to point out. Okay, committee members. So we have this application, we have planning requesting 2 conditions of which the applicant would only is to impose the first. And I guess at this point, it's the non-time limited. Before your approval was 15 years or 10 plus 5 or whatever. So at this point, it would be permanent. Okay, Mr. Taylor? Okay.
Yeah, I find, this is a use that's been in place for a long time. Certainly when we look at the mall in which it's located, it's sort of has a retail facade and obviously a retail component within. I find it to be reasonable. It meets our 4 tests, and I move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for that motion.
I'd like to second that, and I'd like to add the comment that given that, we are meeting this way because of COVID-19 and the resulting issues of that, and the fact that retail is hurting right now. And so I think we should be doing everything to encourage it to continue to exist. And on that basis, I second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Komaric. So all in favor? And we're talking about the approval of the application with the imposition of the only.
Condition 1 only.
Condition 1 of the planning memo. Yeah, the planning memo, but only condition 1.
Okay, so
Condition for the record is that the retail use shall be maintained as ancillary to the wholesale use.
Okay.
Okay, whatever that means. But we are not going to impose that it be limited to 4.2 square meters.
Thank you.
Okay, so all in favor? Okay, the application is unanimously approved. Thank you so much, Mr. Latchman.
And it's not time limited, so you don't have to come back if you continue on.
Correct. So best luck with your
Is
business.
it is permanent that I'm not to come back to the committee?
No, this is a permanent approval.
Oh, because I was hoping to. Okay, thanks.
Sorry?
93 years old, retired then.
Well, you can still retire. No, our condition is that you have to stay open for the next 100 years.
Oh, I appreciate that too, yes. I plan to live until 125.
Just to clarify, that was a joke. Yeah.
No, that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, committee members.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 4.2 is like nothing.
Yeah.
50 square.
Okay, but he did mention that there really is no separation or no division, even at 50%.
Hello.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item number 9, which is 114 Saturn Road. It's an application for 2-story front addition and new front porch. There were 2 variances. Front yard setback and the coverage. And we have before us on this application, first of all, we have one registered speaker. Actually, we don't even, Mr. Pedlusny, Paul Pedlusny, who did not pre-register. Sir, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, sir. So we have on this application comments from Ravines, TRCA, we have the plans and survey. And why don't you just please give us a brief presentation of what you want to do here.
Hi, my name is Paulo Pedlusny. I live in this place. This house belongs to my mom. I live with my wife and my daughter. So our family gets bigger, and we're proposing to get a little bigger house. So we cannot go back to the backyard because there's not too much room. We don't want to lose the backyard. But the front, we want to align the front of the house with the rest of the houses that are on the right. So only 3 houses to the end of the street are going 10 feet towards the backyard, the front line. The rest of the street is going 10 feet forward. So we want to bring our house 10 feet forward as the neighbor next door, and just put a little addition on the second story, just 5 feet forward the second story. Have a little bigger garage, a little longer garage that you can store, kids, toys, and still park the car, and have a dining room bigger on the first floor. That's everything that you're proposing.
Yes, TRCA has no objection, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to basically do your addition at the front, and you're saying that's compatible with the houses on one side of you.
Yeah, one side is compatible.
Yes, sir. Have you spoken to your neighbors?
My neighbors. Yeah. So my neighbor from 112 SATURN Road. So their house exactly the same as mine, 10 feet towards the back. They really looking forward for that because at some point they want to do addition to their house and they want to come 10 feet forward as well. Yes. So I have a letter of support from them. And I spoke with my neighbor at 116, his house in same lines that I'm trying to do. He had some questions about the window on the side, about, if I'm going to go any further. I said I'm not going to go further exactly in the same line as everybody else. And that's about everything. So there was nobody that opposed, and I have one letter from Catherine Hatchek on the left, where the house is actually getting impacted by that, but they all for it, and they have it in writing.
Okay, and I guess by doing your addition at the front, you don't impact the ravine.
No,
you said there'd be no room in your backyard
at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. The backyard I cannot lose because it's not big. It's not that huge.
Yes.
So I'm not touching it at all.
Okay.
There's
thank
no
you,
trees
sir.
at the front. There's nothing at the front whatsoever.
Okay. And urban forestry, I think, do we have a comment from, we have TRCA and ravines, but we have nothing from urban forestry. Let's see if committee members have any questions for you, or if not, we'll take it into the committee for a decision. Any questions for the applicant? Agent? No questions? Oh, Mr. Palmer.
Question, just the driveway seems to be very long. The proposed driveway, you'll have sufficient room to park, how many cars in there, you think? 2 or 3 or 4?
No. Right now, my driveway is long. Technically, I can fit 4 cars, but I have always 2 cars there. So I still would have enough room for 2 cars. My garage right now is 1-car garage, but because of the stuff that I have, I cannot fit my 1 car. So if it's gonna extend 10 feet forward, then I would be able to fit 1 car in my garage as well.
Okay, so sufficient parking.
Yes, everything's sufficient. So it just need to make it a little bigger.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Any further questions for the agent, or are we ready for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I find the two variances to be minor in nature, and the other three tests under the Planning Act are met as well. And I recommend approval without conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for that? Mr. Kamarick, all in favor, show of hands. Unanimous approval. Thank you. Okay, sir,
Thank
you
you.
got your approval. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Have same to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, our last hearing of the morning session is item number 10, 15 Alden Avenue. It's an application to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. A previous committee of adjustment application approved variances relating to lot coverage, floor space index, front yard setback, side yard setbacks, and parking space width. It looks like we missed a coverage issue of 33% to 38, and as well, there's another variance being that the permitted floor space index of 0.45 was increased to 0.67 at the committee approval, and then now it looks like it's going to be also 0.67, so that's not changing. So it just, they summarize there's 7 variances, of which some were approved.
The only difference, Mr. Chair, is variance 5 was missed by our office. So the length is the only new variance being requested.
Okay, so when the applicant was before us some time ago, yeah. And we have urban forestry requesting conditions 1 and 2. Planning is requesting a condition of approval that it be built substantially in accordance with the plans dated May the 8th, which I assume includes this missing variance. And that's basically all we have. Is Mr. Espinola there? Are you with us, Mr. Espinola?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so you were previously here, or you're...
Yes,
you
I
were
was,
here
Mr. Chairman.
back in the old days when you could appear in person. And you got your approval back. It was back in nice snowy day in February, and we missed the one variance.
That's
I don't
correct.
know if there's anything you'd like to add to this. That variance is pretty minor. We'll see if committee members have any questions for you.
Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Espinola? We just heard from staff that this is just they missed a length variance, which is still a variance, so we have a right to reconsider that. Mr. Taylor.
If I may, Mr. Espinola, can you explain why the building length variance was missed in February?
Well, when the public notice was given to the neighbors, there was an unfortunate oversight from staff, and variance relating to length was not included.
Okay, so
as we move forward with our building permit application, it came to light that that variance relating to length was not included.
okay,
This is
so
why we're here.
this length was always proposed, it just wasn't noted.
It was always proposed. Our plans do not change. They're exactly the same as it was before.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay, we do have a letter of opposition, sir. I don't know if you've seen that in the file.
Yes, I have, Mr. Chairman.
From the neighbor
I think the main concern is in regards to landscaping areas, but landscaping is not a variance with our proposal. We comply with rear and front landscaped areas, so it's not a variance.
Okay, so this is a resident of Judson Street in Mimico, and just had some comments about yards, and but that doesn't affect your variance here?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Okay, any questions for Mr. Espinola? Or are we ready for a motion? And I see there's still this urban forestry, and you're aware, sir, of the planning condition? I guess given that this thing was missed.
Yes, I am, yeah.
They're asking it to be built substantially in accordance with the plans dated May the 8th.
That's correct.
You're okay with that?
I'm okay
Okay,
with that. Yes.
any questions for Mr. Espinola? Are we ready for a motion?
Just one quick question. I'm looking at our previous approval, and there was a transportation condition on that, which doesn't appear.
Yes, there was, yes.
Sorry, it's a
Which,
question.
which we have addressed already.
Okay, that's why it's not being asked for a second time.
That's correct, yeah.
Perfect. So on that note, I'd like to move approval the second time.
Okay,
With
did it last time.
subject to forestry conditions 1, 2, and planning condition that it be substantially, with this plan submitted as of May 8th, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Kamarick. Seconder for that? Mr. Taylor, all in favor? Show of hands. Okay, you have your approval. Thank you, Mr. Espinola. Have a great day.
Thank you, members. Likewise, thank you.
Okay, it's now 11:40 and we stand adjourned until 1 p.m. for the afternoon session.